I died for 12 minutes on October 19th, 1987. The same day Wall Street called Black Monday. I was 38 years old, sitting in a Manhattan office watching the Dow drop 22% in a single session, and the stress put me into ventricular fibrillation. The ambulance got me to the hospital. The doctors brought me back. But during those 12 minutes, HaShem showed me something I had spent my entire career not understanding. He showed me the single contract clause that the Rothschild family has written into every major financial agreement since the 1800s. One clause, one paragraph, a clause that conventional law schools do not teach because it is not a legal clause. It is a Torah clause. And every entrepreneur who signs a contract without it is signing himself into bondage. Let me say this very directly. This is not motivational nonsense. This is a clause drawn from the Talmud, used by one of the wealthiest banking dynasties in human history for over 200 years, and almost no business school graduate alive today has even heard of it. Let me tell you about the contract that almost destroyed me before I learned this. In 1985, 2 years before I died, I signed a partnership agreement with a man I will call David. David was a smart operator. He had connections. He had capital. He brought a deal to the table, a real estate development in downtown Brooklyn, and he wanted me as his partner. The contract he handed me was 38 pages long, drafted by a top-tier law firm, reviewed by my own attorney, every page initialed, every clause negotiated. By every conventional measure, that was an airtight agreement. 18 months later, the deal soured. David made decisions without me. He brought in a third party. He moved capital out of the joint account. And when I tried to enforce the contract, I discovered that every single dispute had to go through arbitration in a forum he had quietly chosen. By the time I extracted myself, I had lost almost $300,000. The contract was airtight, yes, airtight against me. What I am about to tell you is the clause that would have saved me. The clause my own father, who had grown up in pre-war Poland, had begged me to add. The clause I had refused to add because my American attorney told me it was unnecessary. The clause that the Rothschild family wrote into every covenant they signed for over 200 years. The Talmud calls it the principle of Beit Din Kavua, the standing court. It is not just an arbitration clause. It is a specific kind of dispute resolution clause that names a known third party of integrity, agreed to in advance, before the dispute even exists. Most arbitration clauses today say that disputes will go to an arbitrator chosen at the time of the dispute. Right now, your money is exposed. Inflation, market crashes, economic collapse. Most people lose everything when it hits. Jewish billionaire families never do. For 3,000 years, they've used one Torah system to protect and multiply wealth through every crisis. That system is now in one book. Link in the description and first pinned comment. That is exactly the wrong design. By the time the dispute arises, the relationship is already poisoned, and one party will fight to choose a forum that favors them. The Talmud teaches that the moment of choosing the judge is the moment when both parties are still in friendship. You choose the judge before you ever need one. You name him in the contract. You write his name on page 1, and you both sign that this person, and only this person, will resolve any dispute. Why does this work? Let me tell you something most business coaches will never explain. A contract is only as strong as the cost of breaking it. Most American contracts assume that the cost of breaking them is the legal fight that follows. The Talmud knew, 3,000 years before American law existed, that the legal fight is exactly what the dishonest partner is counting on. The legal fight is expensive. The legal fight is slow. The legal fight is where the man with more lawyers wins. So the Talmud designed a different system. The contract names in advance a Beit Din, a panel of 3 judges, often rabbis, who are known for their integrity, who will rule in days, not years, and whose decision is binding because both parties have agreed to it before the deal even started. The Rothschild family imported this principle directly from the Talmud into their banking covenants in the early 1800s. Every contract between Rothschild brothers, between Rothschild banks across capitals, between Rothschilds and outside parties, there was a named arbitration body, agreed to in advance. No deal could be hijacked by clever litigation. The cost of breaking the contract was that the named judge would rule in days, and the breaking party would be exposed instantly. Let me give you a biblical example, because the Torah is full of them. Look at the contract Abraham made with Abimelech, king of Gerar, in Bereshit, chapter 21. Abraham did not just shake hands. He did not just sign a document. He took 7 ewe lambs and set them apart as a witness. He named the place Beer-sheva, the well of the oath. He created a public, named, agreed-upon witness mechanism that both parties acknowledged in advance. If Abimelech ever broke the agreement, the witness was already standing. If Abraham broke it, the same. 3,500 years ago, the patriarch was using exactly the principle I am telling you about now. Name the witness in advance, name the judge in advance, make the cost of breaking the contract immediate and unavoidable. Now let me give you the modern application, because this is not an academic exercise. This is the clause you should be writing into every contract this week. Here is what the Rothschild clause looks like in modern form, in plain English. Pay attention. Any dispute arising out of this agreement, including any question of breach, performance, or interpretation, shall be submitted to the binding decision of a panel of 3 arbitrators, named by name in this paragraph, with their professional credentials specified. The arbitrators are X, Y, and Z, with addresses listed below. The panel shall convene within 30 days of written notice of dispute. The decision of the panel shall be final and binding, and shall be entered as a judgment in any court of competent jurisdiction. Each party waives the right to litigate in any other forum. Each party agrees that the named arbitrators shall be replaced only by mutual written consent of both parties. That is the clause. Read it again. Notice what it does. It names the judges before the fight. It sets a 30-day timeline so that the dispute cannot be dragged out for years. It waives the alternative of going to a court that one party might prefer. Every deal you've ever lost, every salary you didn't get, every contract that fell apart, happened because you didn't have this. For 3,000 years, Jewish billionaires have negotiated with 12 Talmud tactics that nobody taught you. I put every single one in one book, the Talmud Negotiation Bible. Link in the description and first pinned comment. Get it now. It binds both parties before either one knows who will need the protection. Why does almost no American contract have this? Because American attorneys make their money on litigation. Because law schools teach that the strength of a contract is its enforceability through the courts. Because the modern legal industry is structured to profit from disputes, not to prevent them. The Talmud designed a different system, a system that prevents the dispute from ever entering the courts at all. Let me tell you what happens to entrepreneurs who do not write this clause. They sign a partnership. They sign an investment agreement. They sign a joint venture. The relationship is good for 2 years. Then something changes. The other party gets greedy, or scared, or distracted. They start doing things outside the contract. The entrepreneur threatens to sue. The other party says, "Fine, sue me." And the entrepreneur learns, after the first attorney consultation, that the lawsuit will cost $200,000, take 3 years, and may not even be enforceable in the jurisdiction the contract specifies. So the entrepreneur swallows the loss. The other party gets away with it, and it happens again, in a different deal, 2 years later, with a different partner. The entrepreneur thinks the problem is bad partners. The problem is bad contracts. Now let me ask you 3 questions you need to answer this week. Question 1. Of all the contracts you have signed in the last 3 years, partnership agreements, investment agreements, vendor agreements, employment agreements, how many name a specific arbitrator by name in advance? Not an arbitrator, a name, with a credential, with an address. If the answer is 0, you are exposed in every one of those agreements. The other party knows it. You did not. Question 2. Who, in your professional or religious community, has the integrity, the experience, and the willingness to serve as a named arbitrator on your future contracts? In Jewish tradition, this was almost always a senior rabbi who was also a businessman or a respected merchant, or sometimes a panel of 3. Today, you can use a respected rabbi, a senior business mentor, a retired judge in your network, or even a formal organization like a Beit Din that handles commercial disputes. The point is that the person is named, agreed to in advance, and respected by both parties. Question 3. What is the cost to you of having one major partnership go bad without this clause? For me, in 1985, it was $300,000 and 2 years of my life. For most entrepreneurs reading this, the cost of one bad partnership without this clause will exceed $500,000 in legal fees, lost revenue, and lost opportunity. The cost of writing this clause into every future contract is 0. You can write it yourself. Your attorney can review it in 15 minutes. Here is something else most business coaches will never tell you. The presence of this clause in your contract changes the behavior of the other party before there is ever a dispute. Why? Because they know that any breach will be ruled on in 30 days by a named judge with no escape into the slow American court system. The cost of breaking the contract becomes immediate. So they do not break it. They behave. The clause does its work before it ever needs to be invoked. This is exactly the function the Talmud designed it to perform. Prevention through clarity of consequence. The Rothschild family understood this for 200 years. Meyer Amschel Rothschild taught his 5 sons that no contract was to be signed unless it named a Beit Din, a standing tribunal of trusted judges, to rule on any future dispute. His sons enforced this with every banking partner across 5 capitals. Their banking houses survived the Napoleonic Wars, the revolutions of 1848, the Franco-Prussian War, the First World War, the Second World War, and dozens of smaller financial panics, in part because they were never trapped in slow, expensive litigation against bad actors. Every dispute was ruled on quickly, by a named authority, by clauses written into every covenant. While other banking houses bled out in years-long legal battles, the Rothschilds resolved disputes in weeks. Let me close with the executive summary. 3 sentences. The Rothschild contract clause names the judge in advance. The Talmud calls this the standing court, the Beit Din Kavua, and it is the single most underused clause in modern business law. Without it, every contract you sign is exposed to slow, expensive, asymmetric litigation that favors the dishonest party. Here is your call to action this week. Pull out the 3 most important contracts you currently have in force. Read every dispute resolution clause. If any of them say an arbitrator chosen at the time of dispute or the courts of jurisdiction, flag them. Then write a 1-paragraph addendum citing this principle by name, proposing a named arbitrator that both parties can agree on. Send the addendum to your counterparty. If they refuse to sign, you have learned something important about who they really are, and you have learned it now when nothing is at stake, instead of 2 years from now, when everything is. When I came back to consciousness in 1987, after those 12 minutes, the first call I made was to my attorney. I told him to redraft every contract I had outstanding to include the named arbitrator clause. Some of my partners refused. Those partnerships ended within months. The ones that remained, the partners who agreed without hesitation, those are the people I still do business with today, almost 40 years later. The clause did not just protect my contracts. It revealed the character of the men I was contracting with. The Torah is not just a holy book. It is the oldest, most tested business manual in human history, and the standing court clause is one of its sharpest tools. Now you have one more page of it. If this gave you the page you needed today, subscribe. Tomorrow, I am going to give you the 4 Pirkei Avot questions that Warren Buffett has used to vet every senior hire at Berkshire Hathaway for over 60 years. He has never said it publicly, but the questions are right there in the Mishnah, in plain Hebrew. I am going to translate them, and I am going to show you exactly how to use them in your own hiring this month.